Donald Gennaro came to the island as a lawyer, not a survivor. He wasn't there for the science or the wonder, just to protect the investors' interests and check boxes on a safety report. When the T-Rex escaped its paddock during the storm, chaos erupted instantly. Terrified, Gennaro abandoned Tim and Lex in the SUV and fled to a nearby bathroom stall, as if flimsy wooden walls could offer any real protection from what was coming. But the T-Rex had other plans. It approached slowly, sniffing out prey, then crashed through the structure like it was made of cardboard. Gennaro sat frozen on the toilet, paralyzed by fear, and could only watch as the massive head loomed over him. With one bone-crushing bite, he was lifted into the air, shaken violently like a rag doll, and devoured. His cowardice didn't just fail him, it sealed his fate. Dennis Nedry thought he was clever. Steal the embryos, shut down the security systems, meet the boat, and escape with a fortune before anyone noticed. But greed made him sloppy, and nothing went according to plan. His Jeep got stuck in the mud during the storm, and as he struggled to set up a winch in the pouring rain, he encountered something he wasn't prepared for. A Dilophosaurus emerged from the darkness. At first, it seemed almost harmless, curious, even playful, tilting its head like a confused pet. Nedry tried shooing it away, annoyed by the distraction. Then everything changed. The creature hissed, spread its colorful neck frill wide, and spat a stream of black venom directly into his eyes. Blinded and screaming, Nedry stumbled backward into the Jeep, completely disoriented and clawing at his face. But the Dilophosaurus had already followed him inside. The door slammed shut, blood splattered across the rain-streaked windshield. His screams were short-lived as the dinosaur tore into him with methodical violence. Robert Muldoon was Jurassic Park's most experienced game warden, and he always warned others about the intelligence and lethality of the velociraptors. He respected them more than anyone else on the island, perhaps the only person who truly understood what they were capable of. When Ellie went to restore power to the park, Muldoon covered her approach, moving carefully through the dense jungle with his weapon raised. He spotted one velociraptor in the brush ahead and crept forward silently, thinking he had her pinned down and in his sights. But he forgot his own words. Raptors hunt in packs, and they never attack alone. A second one emerged from the tall grass on his right flank, moving with deadly precision and absolute silence. He turned too late, eyes widening in recognition and respect. "Clever girl," he muttered, a final acknowledgement of their intelligence, just before she lunged at him with terrifying speed. He was dragged down hard and ripped apart by the pack as they closed in from all sides. In the end, even the most skilled hunter was outmatched by the very creatures he'd spent years studying and respecting. Eddie Carr was the quiet, capable tech expert, resourceful, dependable, and brave when it counted most. When the trailer began sliding off the cliff with Ian, Sarah, and Nick trapped inside, Eddie stayed behind to help while everyone else panicked. Alone in the rain, he used the SUV's winch to anchor the trailer, fighting against time, weight, and gravity itself. He succeeded, pulling them back from the edge and saving 3 lives. Just as the T-Rex pair arrived, they turned on him fast, recognizing the threat. One massive predator bit his upper half, the other clamped down on his legs. In a gruesome tug-of-war, Eddie was torn in two, blood spraying across the windshield as his screams echoed into the storm. His death was horrific and unforgettable, but it was also selfless. He didn't run when he had the chance. He saved lives instead, becoming a hero in a world that doesn't reward heroes, only devours them. Dieter Stark was a harsh, overconfident member of the InGen hunting crew who treated the island like a safari and the dinosaurs like trophies. When he wandered away from camp to relieve himself, he encountered a compy, small, green, and seemingly harmless. Annoyed, he kicked it away like it was nothing. But more arrived, dozens of them. They stalked him through the trees with eerie coordination, biting at his legs and arms with razor-sharp teeth. He ran, stumbled, and fell into a shallow ravine, disoriented and bleeding from countless wounds. The camera pulled away as his screams echoed through the jungle, growing more desperate before fading into silence. Moments later, all that remained was blood-soaked ground and the soft chittering of tiny predators. Death by a swarm of chicken-sized dinosaurs, slow, painful, and humiliating for a man who underestimated nature and was devoured by its smallest teeth. Cooper was part of the hired security team, brought along for protection on what was supposed to be a simple reconnaissance mission. But on Isla Sorna, guns and experience meant nothing against what was waiting. When the Spinosaurus attacked during their illegal landing, chaos exploded instantly. Cooper was separated from the group, and left behind in the dense jungle. Moments later, he burst onto the runway, waving his arms frantically, begging the plane to stop and pick him up. But it was already too late. From the trees behind him, the Spinosaurus charged with terrifying speed and snapped him up mid-run like a predator snatching prey from the savannah. Blood sprayed as the massive jaws clamped down with bone-crushing force. The plane clipped its side as it took off in panic, engines screaming. Cooper never stood a chance. He wasn't rescued. He was devoured before anyone could even react. Nash, the pilot, had no idea what kind of nightmare mission he was flying into when he agreed to land on Isla Sorna. After their violent crash landing, he tried desperately to radio for help using the satellite phone, unaware that the Spinosaurus was still hunting nearby and closing in fast. It returned without warning, tearing into the fuselage like it was made of paper. Nash screamed as it grabbed him, dragging him through the twisted wreckage and into the trees with unstoppable force. The phone, still in his pocket, rang long after he was gone, its haunting ringtone echoing from somewhere deep inside the monster's gut, a grim reminder that he'd been swallowed whole. Udesky was the group's communications specialist, less soldier, more support staff, and completely unprepared for what the Raptors had planned. When the Velociraptors attacked with surgical precision, he was left behind, injured and motionless in an open clearing. The others found him lying still, seemingly dead, his body sprawled at an unnatural angle. Amanda rushed toward him instinctively, desperate to help. But it was a trap. He twitched, still barely alive, just as a raptor emerged calmly from the trees and snapped his neck with a single, deliberate motion right in front of everyone. The raptors had used him as bait, luring the humans into the open where they'd be vulnerable. Simon Masrani believed dinosaurs deserved to be seen, not feared. That wonder and spectacle could coexist with safety if managed properly. But when the Indominus Rex escaped containment, he decided to take matters into his own hands, piloting a helicopter with 2 armed gunners to confront the hybrid himself. As they approached the massive aviary dome, the Indominus smashed through the reinforced glass, releasing a violent swarm of pteranodons into the open sky. Chaos erupted instantly. One creature smashed through the windshield with bone-shattering force. Another struck a rotor blade, sending metal fragments spinning. The chopper spun wildly out of control and slammed into the glass dome, exploding on impact in a massive fireball that rained debris down onto the park below. Masrani's dream of controlled spectacle died with him, engulfed in flames, consumed by the very chaos he swore he could contain and profit from. Zara Young, Claire's overworked assistant, only wanted to keep the kids safe during what should have been a routine day at the park. But when the pteranodons escaped from the shattered aviary, she was snatched from the crowded main plaza mid-scream, lifted high into the air by screeching wings. 2 pteranodons fought over her like seagulls battling over scraps, tossing her between them high above the Mosasaurus lagoon. She was dropped, caught again mid-fall, and plunged violently into the water below. As the creatures dove desperately to retrieve her, the Mosasaurus burst from the depths, jaws wide, eyes cold, moving like a freight train. In one thunderous bite, it devoured them all, disappearing back into the depths with barely a splash. It was violent, chaotic, and absolute overkill for a minor character. Zara's death wasn't just tragic. It was cinematic carnage, swallowed whole by a prehistoric sea monster in front of thousands of screaming guests. Vic Hoskins treated dinosaurs like weapons instead of wonders, pushing constantly for militarization and seeing every creature as a potential asset to control and exploit. As the Indominus situation spiraled completely out of control, he tried to seize power in the chaos, pushing his twisted military vision forward and packing up classified research. But Blue, the raptor he once claimed to control and wanted to weaponize, wasn't listening anymore. In the abandoned lab, as he frantically gathered his secrets, Blue appeared, still, silent, and furious, her intelligent eyes locked on him. He tried to reason with her, extending his hand the way Owen did, thinking their connection meant something. She lunged without hesitation. Hoskins screamed as she tore into him, claws slashing deep, teeth ripping through flesh and bone. His dream of engineered obedience ended in a spreading pool of blood on cold laboratory tiles. He thought he could weaponize nature and bend evolution to his will, but nature turned on him first, fast, and without mercy. Eli Mills was the greedy businessman orchestrating the illegal dinosaur auction at Lockwood Manor. After everything collapsed, he tried to escape with a case full of Indominus Rex DNA, thinking he'd still cash in. He ran out into the rainy night, but the T-Rex was waiting. It snatched him up, shaking him violently before the Carnotaurus arrived to challenge for the meal. The T-Rex dropped Mills, who was then torn in half by the two predators. In a final moment of poetic justice, the T-Rex stepped on the DNA sample, crushing it underfoot and ending Mills's twisted legacy. Gunnar Eversole, the sleazy auctioneer who reveled in selling living weapons to war criminals and dictators, thought the night would end with millions in his account. But when the Indoraptor was unleashed on the auction floor, panic scattered the room in every direction. Eversole fled desperately, squeezing into an elevator with a group of terrified survivors, thinking he was finally safe behind steel doors. But the Indoraptor was faster and far more intelligent than he imagined. It climbed silently above the elevator shaft, pried open the hatch with precision, and dropped inside before the doors could close. The screams were muffled but unmistakable. Blood splattered the polished walls before the lift even reached the next floor. His death wasn't shown directly, but it was absolutely certain. Ken Wheatley was a trophy hunter with little respect for the living animals he captured, seeing them only as prizes to mount or profit from. Inside Lockwood Manor's containment area, he found the Indoraptor tranquilized in a reinforced cage, seemingly unconscious. He entered confidently, grinning at the opportunity, thinking it was just another skull to add to his collection. Reaching carelessly for one of its teeth as a souvenir, he didn't notice the creature's yellow eyes slowly open and track his movement. It had been playing dead, waiting patiently for exactly this mistake. In a lightning-fast flash, the Indoraptor bit off his arm at the shoulder and dragged him screaming across the blood-slicked floor. It tore into him with calculated, almost playful cruelty, not driven by hunger, but by something darker. Wheatley didn't die because he was prey in the traditional sense. He died because he underestimated something far smarter than him. Lewis Dodgson thought he could rewrite the rules of nature, again, profiting from chaos while avoiding consequences like he always had. As Biosyn collapsed around him in flames, every corridor filling with smoke and the screams of the dying, he fled desperately into the underground tunnels with a stolen case of priceless embryos. But the darkness held more than smoke and shadows. A familiar hiss echoed from somewhere ahead, then another, closer. 3 Dilophosaurs emerged slowly from the tunnel walls, neck frills flaring in threat display, cold eyes locked directly on him. He stumbled backward, pleading desperately for mercy. Venom hit him square in the face, burning his eyes and throat. Blinded, choking, gasping for air, he dropped the case as the embryos scattered across the wet floor. The creatures pounced together, tearing into him with savage efficiency. Screams echoed briefly, then faded into wet silence. Just like Dennis Nedry 30 years ago, Dodgson died alone in the shadows, blinded, bitten, and buried by the very past he tried to exploit and profit from. It was poetic justice delivered by nature itself. Delacour was a ruthless poacher who kidnapped Maisie. After being cornered by Owen and Malta, he fell into a dinosaur pit. A Carnotaurus bit off one of his arms. He stumbled away, only to be confronted by a Baryonyx, which promptly bit off his other arm before killing and eating him. His death was a brutal, piece-by-piece dismantling. High above the sanctuary cliffs, Leclerc leads the team collecting DNA from a Quetzalcoatlus nest. The air is tense, the wind sharp. He moves carefully, watching as the scientists extract a massive egg glistening in the sunlight. But then, a shadow crosses the ground. The parent returns. Wings wider than a jet unfurl, wind screaming as the Quetzalcoatlus dives. The team scatters, but Leclerc stands his ground, shouting, waving his arms to draw it away. The creature circles once, then strikes. Its beak clamps down around him, lifting him from the cliffside in a single motion. A scream, a flash of wings, and he's gone, swallowed whole against the blazing sky. The team watches in horror as silence returns. Leclerc's bravery saves them, but the sky keeps what it takes. Martin Krebs is a seasoned mercenary, part of the Biosyn recapture team, tasked with tracking and capturing escaped dinosaurs. He moves confidently through the tunnels, checking security equipment and making sure the DNA samples are secure. He's precise, methodical, thinking he's in control. But after his team, including Zora, finishes securing the dinosaur DNA, Krebs decides to flee alone. Pride and overconfidence push him forward. The tunnel goes quiet. Then, a rumble. The Distortus Rex, a predator faster and smarter than expected, locks onto him. Shadows flash across the walls. He turns, tries to run, but it's too late. Its massive jaws clamp around him, tearing his body in half in a single, brutal motion. Bobby Atwater was a soldier first, protector second. As head of security aboard the Essex, he had faced danger before, but never like this. Contracted to retrieve DNA from the largest living prehistoric species, his team anchored near Ile Saint-Hubert. The sea around them grew deathly still. Then it moved. A pack of Spinosauruses emerged, coordinated, hunting. One surfaced at starboard. Bobby opened fire, driving it back. Then Krebs shouted, "Another, port side." Bobby ran to respond, firing again, unaware the real threat was behind him. Duncan yelled, "Too late!" A Spinosaurus exploded from the water and clamped down on him. Grunting in pain, Bobby clawed at the doorway, locking eyes with Isabella Delgado, calm, defiant. Then the pull of the predator overcame his grip. With a final wrench, he was dragged screaming into the depths. Nina was a mercenary who worked as a co-pilot and deckhand aboard Duncan Kincaid's ship, the Essex. When the ship crashed near shore, she jumped with the others, pulling a life raft through shallow surf, muscles burning, eyes locked on land. But she didn't see what stirred behind her. A Spinosaurus hidden among the rocks rose silently. As Nina pushed the raft forward, it lunged from the water with terrifying speed. She barely had time to scream. Its jaws clamped around her midsection, tearing her from the raft. Blood sprayed across the waves as she vanished beneath the surface. On shore, Duncan ran toward the screams, shouting her name. Too late. Only silence and red water remained. Leclerc arrived moments later, kneeling in quiet horror. On the wet sand, he found her scarf, torn, soaked in blood. Another crewmate gone. Another friend the island had taken.